we're going to make our own bias binding to go onto our seam. For this, I've just chosen a contrast fabric. It's a lightweight cotton. You could use the same fabric, so you could also do this in calico. Now, I'm looking for the selvage here, which is the tightly woven edge which runs down the fabric. So parallel with the warp threads. And sometimes it has little holes in it from when it's been on the loom. Sometimes it has a bit of a frayed edge, but you can tell it's a selvage because you wouldn't be able to pull any more threads out of it. Whereas with the cross grain, it frays away if you pull it. I'm going to give this a bit of a press first. So I've just laid my fabric on the cutting mat and I've got my selvage running up here, and this is my cross grain running across in the other direction. Now I want to cut my binding on a diagonal to this on a 45-degree angle. Now this is because on a woven fabric without any stretch in it, if you pull it across the grain, it's got a little bit of movement depending on your fabric. If you pull it up, so along the warp of the grain, it's got a little less movement. But if you give it a little stretch on the bias, so the 45-degree angle, you can see it's got a bit more movement, and that will allow your binding to sit nicely around curves on your seams. So to do that, you need to find the 45-degree angle on our pattern master. Yeah, so I've got this here 45 and this here, so I'm going to line that up with my selvage like that. I've got a cutting board underneath and I'm using my rotary cutter to cut my binding. I've done my first cut, okay, and I want to make my binding about 3.5 wide. So if I put my 3.5 centimetre line onto my edge of my fabric here, I know that if I do another cut, I'll have binding that's 3.5 wide. Okay. And that's our binding. We need to press that now. I'm going to cut 2 strips. A rotary tool is a great piece of kit once you get used to it, but beware, if used badly it can cut into your pattern master and damage it. You can practice using a rotary cutter with a metal ruler until you get used to it. Always put a cutting mat underneath. You can also cut your binding out with your fabric scissors. You can chalk it up. Just mark it gently because your fabric will stretch a little bit as you start to chalk it. So I've drawn a nice little line for myself. I'm going to cut it with my fabric scissors, yeah? So either way is fine for cutting your binding strips. Just 2 different methods. I'm at the press now with my binding, and to press it I've got this little tool here. It's basically a binding folder. So if you're doing a lot of binding, this could be something for you. Okay, what you do is you actually push the pointed edge into the back of the binder, and as you see it coming through here, you just need to get a pin, put it into the little hole and push it till you see it coming out the other side. Then you can pull your binding out and you can see it's started to fold as it comes out the other side. So if I just put a little pin there to hold it, and one in the other side, and I start to pull the binding tool away, it's folded the 2 sides in, and ideally we want a little tiny gap in the middle. Okay, so I'm just going to continue to move the binding tool and press the binding. So you can get these little tools in different widths. for different widths of binding. This one will take up to about 3.5 centimetres wide maximum. So it's between 3 and 3.5, depending on the thickness of your fabric. Yeah. So just keep moving the binding tool, pressing the sides in as I go. So it's looking like that, 2 sides pressed in, and now I'm going to press it over, okay? So you can buy this binding pre-made. Sometimes you can just buy it flat on the roll like that, or you can buy it pre-folded too. But we want you to know how to make your own, because you might want a specific pattern or print or colour that you can't find in the shop. Okay, so that's our binding. It's folded in half, and those 2 sides are folded into the centre. Okay, let's just press it without the tool, because that is also possible, just a little bit trickier. Press it in half, yeah. Open it out again, and then you've got your centre point here. So you can press one side towards the centre, just leave a little gap so you're not going right into the crease. Just going to pin that there to keep it out my way. Okay, turn it round, press the other side in, conscious that you're keeping a little gap. And then in half again. So it is possible to press your binding manually, it just takes a little bit more time. Okay, got my 2 binding strips for my seam now.